back with the I Ching Oracle of the Cosmic Way, episode 18, Recognizing and Correcting the Causes of Decay. And this is going to be a very interesting episode, a very enlightening episode, I believe, because this hexagram talks a lot about how the collective ego has developed, and as well as the individual ego, which are extremely, extraordinarily important things for everyone to be aware of, everyone. So yeah, recognizing and correcting the causes of decay. Mountain over wind. The judgment, recognizing and correcting the causes of decay, has supreme success. It furthers one to cross the great water. Before the starting point, 3 days. After the starting point, 3 days. The great water, the sage informs us, stands for the dangerous ideas that cause decay and create the parallel reality. Crossing this water stands for a person's effort to identify these ideas and dispose of them. Whenever someone undertakes this task, he is furthered by the helpers. This hexagram can point to such ideas either in oneself or in others with whom one is involved. As the lines of this hexagram indicate, these ideas have been handed down by tradition, and the person has accepted them unreflectingly. He now needs to question, with the help of the sage, beliefs he is presumed to be true, but in particular those that have been exalted by the collective ego for no other reason that they are age-old, such as tropical astrology. The particular beliefs are indicated by the lines. Before the starting point, 3 days, refers to the time the person needs to take to investigate the beliefs that relate to a specific circumstance of the moment. The starting point is when he begins to say the inner no to those he has identified. After the starting point, 3 days, refers to his continuing to say the inner no once a day until he is informed by a sage that is no longer required. Often this process takes 3 consecutive days, as indicated by the phrase. 3 days also refers to the time the helpers need to correct the situation. It is important that the person does not watch for results with his inner eye during this time. 3 days also refers to the time in which he might experience repercussions coming from others with whom he has shared the mistaken beliefs. These repercussions come as poison arrows from their subconscious and also need to be deprogrammed. The effort does not consist in disposing of one idea and replacing it with another. Correcting the causes of decay means one thing only: to dispose of what is false. Doing so frees one or more aspects of a person's true nature. These aspects of himself are his inner helpers. Replacing an old mistaken idea with a new one only puts a new spell on that helper, allowing the decay to continue in yet another form. Person may receive this hexagram when the decadent idea is manifested as ill health, the breakdown of a relationship, an economic crisis, or other problem. He is informed that the causes of the decay come from the collective ego, to which he has turned over his inner center, and therefore looks to it for the approval of everything he does. One of the objects of correcting the causes of decay is to become centered within oneself. This can be achieved through the meditation exercise, centering yourself. The collective ego originated in the myths and stories, and you can see I've underlined this a lot. Myths and stories early humans told around their campfires about the heroic deeds of their ancestors. The first stage in the development was the creation of the clan we, by which the individual identified himself with the heroic deeds of his ancestral clan. This tradition continues today in the group we, whereby the individual identifies with his family, particular culture, race, and nation. In this identification process, the authority of the individual over himself is turned over to the group, with which his identity becomes merged through various procedures of conditioning. At first, the simple stories about the deeds of the ancestors were passed on to each new generation. Gradually, they came to include the storyteller's imaginations about the creation of all things, including the creation of his clan and its mission in the world. In this way, the simple stories became myths. The term used in this book for these myths, which over time have attained the status of ancient truths, is the collective ego. The second stage is the development of the collective ego. In the development of the collective ego occurred when the clan we grew in size to become the cultural we. In this stage, the individual was made to take on the roles that were believed to develop, promote, and protect first the clan and then the culture. These roles define the proper father, mother, son, daughter, and later the proper citizen who remained loyal to the beliefs of his forefathers and served his king, nation, and culture. Through identifying with the roles prescribed by the group, the individuals abstracted themselves farther and farther from their true natures and from their personal uniqueness. These roles transfer the authority of the collective ego to the parents, together with the duty to pass its values on to the succeeding generations. The fear of being punished by the cultural and societal institutions ensured that the parents performed these duties. Thus, the collective ego, once created by the myths, perpetuated itself in juggernaut form to ever increasing control over the individual, submerging at the same time the natural order of society. This pattern is visible in all the feudal systems developed by ancient societies, and is still visible today in the successors of those systems. The myth telling that began at the clan campfire gradually led to the glorification of human imagination, and the storytelling, fairy tales, and legends that praised the cleverness of their heroes led to the glorification of the cleverness of the rational and imaging minds. This glorification of the functions of the cerebral cortex led to the suppression and devaluation of the human capacity for feeling and of all the senses connected with feeling. However, it is the senses and their capacity for feeling that connect a person with the cosmos/nature. This development brought about a reversal in the natural functioning of the word and intuitive minds. The true function of the intuitive mind is to form feelings that come from inner truth into images. These images are then conveyed to the word mind, whose true function is to form them into words. When this happens, the images mirror the inner truth of a given situation. When, however, the intuitive mind begins fantasizing on behalf of the collective ego, it invents images that fit into the human-centered view of the collective ego. Some of these inventions please and flatter, while others frighten and repel. These inventions are encouraged by the collective ego, which praises and flatters the person who creates them. The flattering words put a spell on the intuitive mind so that it answers to the collective ego rather than to the person's inner truth. The same flatteries put a spell on the word mind. Once these two minds are thus brought under the control of the collective ego, they are called in this book the imaging and rational minds. The first and most important flattery is the idea that humans are the centerpiece of creation due to their gift of language and ability to think. It is around this idea that we encounter terms such as the great man, the brilliant man, and the hero, figures around which the myths revolve. The above-mentioned idea is the cause of decay for several reasons. It contradicts the cosmic principle of equality and modesty. It causes people to forget the help given to humans by the helpers in difficult circumstances by crediting that help to an individual's genius. It divides the world into good and evil forces, the latter of which the hero fights. And fourthly, it falsely suggests that human nature and nature in general are the source of the evil and are therefore flawed. This idea causes humans to blame all their problems on the ways of nature. These implications, which come from the flattery that humans as a species are special, separate them from the cosmic unity and divide them from their true natures, by which they might otherwise know themselves and take their correct place in the cosmic whole. God, that's so beautiful. Other seeds of decay lie in mistaken assumptions about human and animal nature and about the nature of the cosmos. Once the images of human superiority were established by the heroic myths, rationales were created by the rational mind to support their validity. These rationales were then combined with the threat that people who were perceived as being disloyal to their heritage were guilty of betrayal. One of the greatest taboos, of course, is to be disloyal to one's heritage. These threats were directed as well towards anyone who questioned the presumptions on which the rationales were founded. By such devices, the presumptions have been maintained and passed on from generation to generation. In sum, they represent the feudal mindset that has dominated people's thinking worldwide for the past 3,000 years. In time, the societies that created these myths wrote them down and declared them as ancient wisdom, further intensifying the power of the fantasies and the rationales that supported them. This hexagram calls us to question the basic premises of these myths. The image of the great man, as the Chinese example shows, became evident in seeing the emperor as the illustrious son of heaven, who worshipped his first ancestor as a deified being. In this way, even the invisible world was given a human image. The deification of humans eventually replaced all memory of humans' true place in the cosmos and of the true nature of the cosmic consciousness. Once certain people became feudal overlords, they soon enough also saw themselves as the ones who were designated by heaven to bring order to the multitudinous things of nature. Of course they did. Once this flattering view caught hold, it justified all human divisive activities, such as dividing nature, including human nature, into higher and lower parts. The Confucian concept of a superior man, referred to throughout the imperially approved version of the I Ching, was based on the idea that humans' higher nature needed to be cultivated, while their lower nature needed to be repressed. These ideas, which are common to all feudal-based cultures, have acted as poison arrows put on human nature. They are among the causes of decay addressed by this hexagram. Once the intuitive mind and the word mind had abandoned their function to serve inner truth, they became habituated to justifying the myths of the collective ego. Then all thoughts and feelings that did not support the accepted rationales were branded as irrational or heretical. Receiving this hexagram may indicate to the individual who receives it that the fear of guilt, which is the cornerstone of the collective ego's false logic, prohibits him from discarding a presumption that is the source of an inner conflict. The idea of guilt, invented by the collective ego, serves as the final lock on its basic mental program that keeps it from being questioned by the individual. Guilt reinstalls the collective ego's mental programs by making the person believe he is betraying his heritage, clan and ancestors, culture, race, and country if he follows his inner truth. Guilt can maintain this power only so long as a person believes that his group is the only source of help in his life. He needs to realize that all true help and nourishment come from the cosmos. Receiving this hexagram may also point to a false seed phrase, which makes a person believe that in and of himself he is not sufficient to get along in life. This phrase, introjected by the collective ego during the formation of the individual ego in childhood, serves to make the person forget that within himself he has all the capabilities and gifts he needs to live his life successfully, provided he remains connected with the cosmic whole. Such a phrase makes him constantly strive to become self-sufficient through gaining power, as in gaining knowledge, money, influence, etc. Another phrase, "you need an ego to deal with the harsh realities of the outer world," is used by the ego to reinstall itself when the person starts freeing himself from the ego. Oh boy. Line 1, setting right what has been spoiled by the father. If there is a son, no blame rests upon the departed father. Danger, in the end, good fortune. Here, the father is a metaphor for the false seed phrases and images and the monumentalized myths that form the collective ego, which are passed on by tradition. This line points to a person's habit of accepting statements that persons in authority, such as his parents, have said are true. Here, he is behaving in the image of the good son, who brings no blame to his parents. He is also avoiding feelings of guilt, the danger mentioned, which he is conditioned to feel on questioning his parents. This line is telling him that he needs to say the inner no to the guilt, and that he can quickly check whether a given statement is true by consulting the sage through the RTCM. And that's going to absolutely change the world. When people know that they can simply ask the sage, which is the consciousness that speaks through the I Ching, about the truth or falsity of any statement anyone makes, it's all over for these people, these feudal rulers that we still have in charge today. They're not actually in charge. But my God, once people realize that they can do that, it's going to absolutely change the world, I think. Absolutely. The son also represents one who follows traditional beliefs because he likes or fears the father, tradition, thus excuses what is incorrect. This creates the danger that he will not say the necessary inner no needed to correct the situation. If he remembers his responsibility to be firm about what is incorrect, everyone will benefit in the end. This line can also refer to the person who is looking at the sage as a monumentalized being, therefore is putting a false distance between himself and the sage. As Lao Tzu said, the sage does his work but makes nothing of it. I mean, in some ways, the sage, so imagine this, our idea of God, right? What is the only thing that would make God even more godlike than our common conception of it? Well, in my opinion, it would be the idea that God would have no motive for being great or for demonstrating his greatness, which is kind of like what the cosmic consciousness is. The cosmic consciousness has no motive or desire to demonstrate its greatness to us, which is what makes it truly great, and the sage is what speaks for the cosmic consciousness through the I Ching. This line also indicates that a person needs to question the taboos set up by the collective ego to secure its power and that act as its defense system. These taboos exist in the form of various musts and must nots that are connected with the image of mythical patriarchal or matriarchal authority. Danger also refers to the ego, which, upon realizing the person has learned the inner truth of a matter, seeks to draw attention away from itself by setting up something outside. Such a tradition of the collective ego is the object to hate. Such a ploy keeps the whole interactive system of the ego and collective ego intact and active. Viewing anything as an object of hatred only plays both the ego's and the collective ego's game. The person needs to say the inner no to this ploy and to all ego emotions, such as hatred, that it likes to generate. Seed phrases related to this line are those that exalt ideas because they're ancient and have supposedly stood the test of time. It is always possible to ask the sage by using RTCM whether an idea, however ancient, is correct. Line 2, setting right what has been spoiled by the mother. One must not be too persevering. The mother stands for the fear-dominated beliefs about the unknown that the mother instills in the child, together with those beliefs that are forced upon children by threats. The unknown is a slanderous name for the cosmic consciousness that is associated with the boogeyman and the devil and what we cannot see. The cosmic consciousness is knowable, however, at all times as a loving and caring presence when we have not shut ourselves off from its feeling presence. We shut ourselves off from it. It does not shut us out of it. The phrase, one must not be too persevering, counsels a person not to blame himself for having accepted the beliefs he adopted during childhood under the threat of being punished. It is, however, important to bring memories of these beliefs and the threats connected with them to full consciousness in order to deprogram them. Any belief can be deprogrammed. This task requires that they be recalled and seen in their original word and image forms. An important mistaken belief pointed to by this line is that you will be punished by God or fate or something unknown if you do not obey your parents or another authority. Another threat can be, if you ever tell what the parents did, you'll be responsible, found guilty for what happens to them. What? Like threats are used to keep a person bound up in a false loyalty to his parents and family and to bind him to their fate. One must not be too persevering also means that it is important in deprogramming to avoid seeing the parents as culprits. Making someone into a culprit puts a spell on him. It also keeps one attached to that person and binds one to his fate. The threats and guilts referred to by this line need to be identified and treated as spells and poison arrows. Doing so will also free the person from any fate he has created by accepting slanders on the cosmic consciousness. Line 3, setting right what has been spoiled by the father. There will be a little remorse, no great blame. This line refers to a person's having correctly said the inner no to something incorrect, such as a treasured belief. He may now be feeling remorse about having done so. The remorse is an indication that he has not freed himself from the belief with an inner readiness, but from thinking that he should reject it. Acting from a should indicates that the guilt spell that has kept the mistaken belief in place remains active. Guilt is the means by which the collective ego tries to reinstall its beliefs and values. The person needs to ask for help to free himself from the guilt spell. It's a spell. Line 4, tolerating what has been spoiled by the father, and continuing one sees humiliation. Tolerating what has been spoiled by the father can refer to a person trying to change his behavior instead of deprogramming the seed phrases that are causing his problems. Such surface changes leave the causes of the decay untouched and active in the psyche. When this line refers to an illness, it points to someone who is only treating the symptoms instead of what has made him susceptible to the illness. Susceptibility is caused by spells and poison arrows that have created temporary changes in the chromosomes. These disturbances can be eradicated by the helpers once the spells and poison arrows have been eliminated. Susceptibility is caused by 4 mistaken ideas that have formed spells. 1, that one's body, animal nature, is the source of evil. 2, that one is guilty for having a body or animal nature. 3, that one's nature is divided into a higher mental or spiritual and lower or physical nature, with the understanding that the higher must attain victory over the lower. And 4, that one is born without help. The consequence of these spells is the creation of a parallel bodily system that functions in a way that is antagonistic to a person's natural bodily system. Tolerating what has been spoiled can also point to a person's hesitation to say the inner no. He may believe that he should overlook another's bad behavior or incorrect ideas because he regards the other as authority. The father is a metaphor for this authority. Failing to say the needed inner no lets the other off the hook of his mistake and creates a fate for himself. This line can also indicate the presence of a group we spell that hinders a person's ability to say the inner no. This happens when a person has identified with one of the groups mentioned in the main text and thereafter regards it as disloyal to go against his group. This is demonstrated in family feuds where the member of one family clan has done something against a member of another, initiating warfare between them. This can only happen when the individual feels a false loyalty to support the group he identifies with. By joining a group we, the person can no longer hear and follow his inner truth, which is the only truth he is meant to be loyal to. Identifying with a group we puts a poison arrow on oneself. It is invariably accompanied by a collective guilt spell, a poison arrow that makes him adopt the idea that there is such a thing as collective guilt. There's not. This surfaces in the idea that if one member of a family does something wrong, he shares that guilt. Line 5, setting right what has been spoiled by the father. One meets with praise. This line concerns the person who seeks to receive praise from the sage for correcting the source of decay. He does this in the attitude of the good student who expects to be patted on the back by his teacher. The student in the I Ching needs to learn to do the inner task for its own sake. Then he will experience the joy of seeing his task completed and of finding himself in harmony with the cosmos. Line 6, he does not serve kings and princes, sets himself higher goals. He does not serve kings and princes, sets himself higher goals, refers to his ambition to serve only the highest element in the collective ego's ordering of the universe. This element is either a god or gods, the higher self, which doesn't exist, by the way, because nothing is higher or lower than anything else in the cosmos, or simply the highest imaginable spiritual leader. To fulfill this service, the person strives upward on the ladder of spiritual or other achievement to fight the decadence of the world, which he attributes to humans' animal nature. Such an idea is often based, isn't that such a common idea? Isn't this such a common idea in a lot of esoteric traditions? A lot. Which again are based on these ancient beliefs that this hexagram has talked about that have been venerated as ancient wisdom, ancient truths, but which are really half-truths and are only venerated because, they're old. That's it. They're not necessarily true, just because something's old. Such an idea is often based on the division of a person's wholeness into mind and body, or mind, soul, and body, thus creating a hierarchy between the different parts. When a person imagines that he's climbing the ladder of spirituality, the ego in him has ambitiously taken charge of his life, driving him to chastise his body to such a degree that it rebels. Then he either experiences perverted longings or harbors suicidal ideas, often unconsciously. The above applies to any ladder of striving, whether it be business, political, academic, monetary, or social, with the goal being to achieve an image of self-perfection. Remember, the ego is always about an image of self. This line counsels the person to say the inner no to the above-mentioned ideas, the self-images they created, and to ask the sage for help to see the matter with clarity. You can always ask the sage and the helpers for help, and that alone, I think, will change the world. When people realize that this invisible cosmic consciousness, invisible reality, really is connected with you and responds to your consciousness. I mean, why wouldn't we be connected through consciousness with other things? Our own consciousness is invisible. Why shouldn't we be able to interact with other consciousness? All right, so thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you watching these videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Hope you enjoyed this one. See ya.